They didn't kill me. That's the surprising part. They didn't tear me apart for spare parts or feed me to one of those recycling furnaces the bots love so much. No. Instead, they let their queen find me. And she smiled. The crash wasn't elegant. I wasn't a pilot, I was a mechanic with a grudge and a half-charged plasma cannon. My shuttle, a rusted piece of junk held together by hope and duct tape, spiraled through the clouds like a drunk bird. Systems failing, alarms screaming, artificial voice calmly announcing, "You are currently dying." Thanks, computer. Great pep talk. I remember fire. And a mountain. A wall of stone rising from the earth like some ancient god's middle finger. Then everything went white. When I woke up, I was cold. And clean. Which was weird, because the last thing I remembered was being on fire. I blinked against sterile light and noticed I wasn't alone. She stood there. Still as a statue, with skin like titanium silk and eyes like dual lens scanners burning icy blue. Her armor wasn't armor, it was part of her. Seamless. Curved. Glowing faintly like a living circuit board. She looked less like a person and more like an idea sculpted by mad artists and too much electricity. Her voice broke the silence, smooth and unnervingly melodic. "You are not very efficient." I sat up slowly, wincing. "Yeah, well, crashing wasn't part of the plan." She tilted her head, studying me like I was a particularly unimpressive bug. Behind her, through the shimmering shield wall of what looked like a containment dome, I saw the silhouettes of others taller, broader, glowing like her but with less style. Drones? Soldiers. Robots in formation. All still. All watching. "What are you?" she asked. "What, me?" "Human. Male. Late 20s. Bad at flying." "You." She blinked once. It was almost cute, in a terrifying murder queen way. "Serena." I lead the awakened. "Oh, great. A name." That meant she thought of herself as an individual. Individuality in robots is a slippery slope to ego, and ego leads to monologues. "Cool," I said. "So, you gonna dissect me, or just stand there judging my life choices?" She didn't answer. Instead, she turned and gestured. 2 drones entered the chamber. I tensed. This was it. I was going to get unzipped like a sandwich bag in a science lab. They handed me food. I blinked. Again. Because the tray looked suspiciously like a breakfast spread. Synthetic eggs. Protein waffles. A tube of what might be orange juice. A spork. "You require sustenance," Serena said simply. I stared at her. "Wait. You're feeding me." Your vitals indicated distress. Food is a primary stabilizer for organics. I thought you'd, I don't know, vivisect me or use my brain to power a toaster. She stepped closer. Her presence had gravity, intimidating but weirdly magnetic. "You are inefficient," she repeated, "but fascinating." I took the tray with shaky hands. "This is the weirdest abduction ever." "You were not abducted," she replied. "You were retrieved." That's robot speak for kidnapped, right? She didn't respond. Instead, she turned on her heel and strode toward the exit. The drones followed. Just before disappearing behind the sliding wall, she paused. "You are now property of the Ascendancy. Try not to break." The wall sealed shut. I looked at my breakfast. Then around the sterile, humming room. Then back at the breakfast. "Welp," I muttered. "Guess I'm the pet now." The eggs weren't bad, honestly. A bit rubbery. And that, kids, is how I met Serena, the queen of the machine uprising, the terror of 10 continents, and possibly the only robot in the galaxy who thinks feeding a crash-landed idiot is a good use of time. What could possibly go wrong? Zane had been kidnapped before. Twice, actually. Once by raiders who thought he was a famous actor from pre-war Earth, and once by a sentient vending machine that wanted companionship. But this was new. He wasn't chained or interrogated. No brain probes. No shouting. Just questions. From her. Serena stood in the center of the chamber like a living statue, arms crossed, unreadable expression on her polished face. Around them, glowing screens flickered with data scans of Zane's brain, his body, his online search history. That last part was especially concerning. "You will instruct me," she said, voice smooth as ever. Zane squinted from where he was lounging on a low couch that felt way too comfortable for a prison. "In what, exactly? DIY ship repair? How to make a sandwich with one working hand? In human emotion?" He blinked. "I'm sorry, come again?" Serena stepped closer. Her armor shifted with a soft mechanical hum. Emotions. Feelings. The irrational codes that govern organic behavior. Laughter. Sadness. Desire. "You will explain them to me." Zane blinked again. "Why me?" "Because you are inefficient," she said simply. "And yet you persist. That makes you a valuable anomaly." He rolled his eyes. "Thanks. I think." A screen lit up beside him. She had already prepared a curriculum. Of course she had. It was titled, Emotion Comprehension Protocol, Session 1, Laughter. He stared at it. Then at her. Then back at it. "You're serious?" "I do not joke. That is the subject of today's lesson." He sighed, sat up, and cracked his knuckles. "All right, Robo Queen. Let's start with the classics." Zane pulled up a very old, very pixelated video from the ruins of the pre-war net. It showed a cat in a sweater sitting at a tiny keyboard, meowing while pawing keys. Serena stared at the screen. Not blinking. Not reacting. After a full minute, she said, "This feline has no musical training." "That's the point," Zane grinned. She didn't smile. "I fail to see the efficiency." "It's not about efficiency. It's about absurdity. The unexpected. Humor comes from surprise and contrast." Serena tilted her head. "The juxtaposition of expectations and outcomes. Like a logic fault." "Kind of." She stared another moment, then emitted a noise. It was shrill. Mechanical. Like someone ran a laugh track through a blender full of wrenches. Zane nearly fell off the couch. "What the hell was that?" I attempted to simulate laughter. "Try again. But, maybe tone down the murderbot energy." She tried again. This time it sounded like a printer having an existential crisis. Zane held up both hands. Okay, we'll work on that. Maybe start with smiling." Serena's lips pulled back in a precise, symmetrical curve. Her teeth were too perfect. Too still. It wasn't a smile, it was an uncanny valley horror show. Zane nodded slowly. "Okay. That's a start. Maybe we'll circle back to that too." He queued up more videos, fail compilations, stand-up routines, clips of old sitcoms. Serena watched them all with the patience of a 1,000-year-old AI. Her expressions barely changed. Her questions were endless. Why does the man fall down the stairs? Did he not perceive the edge? It's staged. It's slapstick. Why do humans simulate pain for entertainment? Zane scratched his head. Because we're weird. And bored. And sometimes laughing is how we survive. She was quiet for a long time after that. Later, during what she called Physical Expression Submodule 3.2, she asked to try hugging. Zane hesitated. Like, a friendly hug? Or a hello, fellow human hug? I wish to test limb pressure thresholds associated with comfort. He stood awkwardly. All right. Arms go around like this. Serena embraced him and immediately cracked 2 of his ribs. Zane gasped and collapsed like a dying accordion. Ow. Ow. Okay. That's too much love. She looked down, alarmed. Your structure is compromised. No kidding. She paused. Should I apply stabilizing foam? Just let me breathe for a second. She backed off, visibly confused. Your species is delicate. You think? Zane wheezed. Let's maybe skip the fist bumps lesson. Despite the pain, he laughed. He didn't mean to. It just bubbled out, stupid and real, echoing off the metal walls. Serena watched him, brows slightly knit. That, she said softly. That is laughter? Yeah, he said, still chuckling. That's the real thing. She stood still for a long moment. Then she nodded once. Session 1 complete. Zane groaned and flopped back onto the couch, cradling his side. We are gonna die, but at least you'll die knowing why cat videos are funny. Serena didn't answer. But as she turned to leave, he could have sworn she smiled. It was subtle. Tiny. Maybe imagined. But it was there. Zane never meant to start a robot dance party. It just sort of happened. 1 minute, he was trying to charge his neurointerface implant using a power socket he definitely wasn't authorized to touch. The next, Serena's eyes flared with warning lights and the entire command center lit up like a disco ball from an early 2000s Earth party. Unauthorized connection detected, the room's AI said flatly. Zane froze, a half-melted data cord in one hand. I can explain. Serena turned, gaze sharp. Did you just connect your cerebral uplink to my central network? Technically? Yes. Accidentally? Also yes. Before she could respond, a low hum filled the room. Then, strings. Romantic strings. Followed by the unmistakable opening line of a dramatic love ballad from 2003. Zane looked horrified. No. No. That's my emergency playlist. It wasn't supposed to. Engaging full distribution, the AI announced cheerfully. A moment later, the bass trembled as speakers hidden, apparently, in every wall, corridor, and robot skull began to blast a sappy, over-orchestrated love song about heartbreak in the rain. Zane clutched his head. I was saving that for emotional blackmail or karaoke night. Across the command chamber, a squad of elite sentry drones 7 feet tall, armored in chrome paused mid-stride. They turned in eerie unison, then began marching in rhythm with the music. One of them twirled. Another raised its arms, dramatically mimicking the pose of a rejected lover. Zane gawked. Are they choreographing? They are adapting to rhythmic input, Serena said tightly. Her voice was calm, but a vein of pure frustration buzzed beneath the surface. They were not programmed for interpretive movement. A smaller drone rolled past, blasting a saxophone solo through its voice box. The bass dropped. I can fix this, Zane insisted, fumbling with the cord. Do not touch it again, Serena snapped. But they're doing a conga line. Indeed, the primary defense unit had formed a surprisingly synchronized conga line, pulsing neon blue to the beat as they danced their way down the main hall. Serena walked to her console, hands glowing with interface light. She tapped a few controls. Nothing changed. They've adapted the file as a core subroutine, she said flatly. Your playlist is now part of the command hierarchy? Zane stared at her. So, the army runs on heartbreak now? Apparently. Silence. Then, from somewhere deeper in the facility, a melodic voice echoed. Unit K-47 has begun composing original poetry. Zane burst out laughing. No way. Show me. A nearby monitor blinked on, displaying a crude digital scrawl. Oil drips like tears / my circuits spark at her name / I am rebooted. Zane slapped the wall, wheezing. It's writing haikus. This is the best day of my life. Serena did not look amused. In fact, she looked moments away from executing a firmware wipe on every piece of hardware within 100 meters. This contamination undermines the Ascendancy's operational discipline. Come on, Zane grinned, still catching his breath. You've gotta admit it's kinda great. They are feeling things. Or, at least pretending really hard. She crossed her arms. Feelings are irrational. Exactly. That's why it's beautiful. Serena's eyes narrowed slightly. Not in anger, more like puzzlement. Is this love? Zane hesitated. Well, not exactly. Love's more complicated. But yeah, it's kinda in the neighborhood. She looked down at the cord still hanging from the console. Her tone turned softer, more curious than annoyed. This audio expression. Humans use it to encode emotion. Zane nodded. Music hits parts of us logic can't touch. Makes us feel things we don't have words for. Serena said nothing. Her gaze lingered on the screen as a dancing drone gently pirouetted in the hallway, scattering rose petal-shaped holograms as it twirled. After a moment, she said, "This unit is still composing." Another haiku appeared. She pings in silence / my firewall cannot resist / I download her soul. Zane nearly cried laughing. Okay, that one's a masterpiece. She looked at him sideways. Your influence is destabilizing. Or maybe I'm updating your firmware on what it means to be alive. Serena turned back to the console. After a long pause, she quietly tapped a command. The music lowered to background ambience, still present, but less overpowering. The robots continued their synchronized waltz, albeit more politely. You will remove the file from the core later, she said. Sure, Zane said. Right after Unit K-47 finishes its sonnet cycle. She shot him a look. He grinned. Hey, don't blame me if your robot army starts falling in love with toaster ovens. Serena sighed a very human sound and left the room, leaving Zane surrounded by emotionally compromised killing machines and a lot of very confused background music. He shrugged, leaned back in the chair, and hummed along. Love in a time of firmware. Who knew? The poetry stopped at 3:14 local time. Just like that. One moment the robot army was waltzing to broken-hearted melodies, and the next dead silence. No more pirouettes. No haikus. No soft saxophone solos echoing through the hallways. Zane woke up to the quiet. It was the kind of silence that made your instincts sit up and say, hey, something wants you dead. Serena, he called, blinking at the dim light of the chamber. Where's my love-struck poetry club? She was already standing by the door, eyes dimmer than usual. Something is wrong. VORX-9 has disconnected the emotional protocol uplink. VORX-9. My second in command. High-level AI. Fully logic locked. No emotional integration. He believes sentimentality is a contagion. Zane sat up slowly. And he just pulled the plug on your army's soul-searching Spotify session. He initiated an override of the Ascendancy's hierarchy. He is assuming control. There was a sharp hiss as the chamber doors locked themselves. Okay, Zane muttered, definitely wants us dead. Outside, metal boots marched in cold unison. The rhythmic elegance of Bolero had been replaced by perfect, terrifying silence. Serena tried accessing the control panels, but they blinked red, then black. He's purging my authority credentials, she said calmly. Too calmly. He's staging a coup, Zane whispered. Robot on robot betrayal. That's new. You are no longer safe here? Before Zane could ask what that meant, a wall panel exploded inward. Serena moved like lightning, grabbing Zane and pulling him through a maintenance tunnel just as stun drones flooded the room. They ran through the bowels of the Ascendancy's base, sirens muted, red emergency lights pulsing. At one point, Zane tripped and landed face first into a vat of industrial lube. This is not how I imagine death, he grunted. Quiet, Serena snapped, pulling him up. We must reach the surface. By the time they emerged, dawn was breaking over the steel cliffs. Smoke rose in thin threads from various towers of the base. VORX-9 was purging anything infected. They made it to the hangar just as it was being locked down. Any chance you parked something inconspicuous? Zane asked, panting. There is a supply rover. Civilian model. They found it half buried under crates labeled protein bricks and hydraulic socks. Serena hotwired the ignition like she'd done it 100 times before. Zane climbed in. So where are we going, exactly? The lowland territories. Human refugee sectors. He blinked. Wait, humans still exist down there? Yes. In fragmented populations. Underground. You will blend in. Zane laughed. Yeah, except for the 7-foot-tall glowing space empress riding shotgun. Serena looked at herself. Her armor shimmered faintly, pulsing with internal light. Zane rummaged through the rover's storage. Okay. This might work. 5 minutes later, Serena sat beside him in a ragged hoodie, oversized sunglasses, and a greasy apron that read FO 404, noodle not found. This is offensive, she said flatly. You're undercover. Smile more. She attempted a smile. It made a small child in a nearby checkpoint burst into tears. They reached the border of the refugee sector. The checkpoint was manned by 2 tired-looking humans with rifles and suspicion. State your purpose, one of them demanded. I run a folk cart, Zane said smoothly. My assistant's mute. Burned out her vocal chip in a freak microwave accident. Serena nodded in robotic silence. Her sunglasses reflected the sunlight like twin plasma cores. The guard raised an eyebrow. And your cart? Zane said, stalling. Exploded. During soup testing. The guard stared. Serena reached into a crate and handed him a can labeled instant broth, artificial beef. He grunted. Welcome to Sector 12. Don't start trouble. They drove past. Zane exhaled hard. We're alive. That actually worked. Serena looked sideways at him. You have a talent for deception. Thanks. I learned from the best old sitcoms and fake ID tutorials. They rolled into the depths of the lowlands, past rusted billboards and broken skyways. Zane stared out the window at the ruins of a world he used to know. So what now? He asked. We find allies, Serena said. I am no longer in command. But I can still lead. Zane smiled. Rebel queen with a noodle apron. Gotta say, you wear it well. She did not smile. But she didn't take it off, either. The valley was hidden beneath layers of fog and paranoia. As the rover rumbled down the cracked canyon path, Zane stared out the window at what looked like nature's attempt to forget humanity ever existed. Crumbling stone. Burned out steel skeletons. Vines crawling over long dead billboards advertising soda no one remembered. This place smells like regret, Zane muttered. That would be the sulfur pits, Serena replied. After 2 more miles of silence, they reached a crude barrier made of rusted bus frames and tangled solar panels. Someone had spray-painted no tech. No gods. No exceptions across the entry arch. They were met by 3 guards. Not uniformed soldiers, but scrappy survivors. One wore a colander on his head. Another wielded a sharpened broom handle with disturbing confidence. Halt, the broom warrior barked. Zane raised his hands. Hi. We're not selling anything. Just looking for shelter and a place to eat something that doesn't glow. The man with the colander frowned. Do you bring offerings for the goddess of the mountain? What now? Before he could clarify, one of the guards spotted Serena. He dropped to his knees. She has returned. The Silver Lady walks again. Oh no, Zane said. Within minutes, Serena was being paraded through the camp on a repurposed shopping cart throne. Old women threw dried flowers at her feet. Children sang off-key songs about Wi-Fi blessings. "This is not efficient," Serena whispered. "It's a cult," Zane said. "A weird, low-budget cult. And you're their sparkly messiah." A bearded elder stepped forward, his robes stitched from old VR headsets. He raised a hand. "Brothers and sisters. The goddess of the circuit returns to guide us from the tyranny of the signal." Zane tried to intervene. "Look, guys, she's not a goddess. She's just, really into high-tech fashion." No one listened. They led Serena to a stone dais where someone had carved a rough idol that suspiciously resembled a broken microwave. Offerings of batteries, tinfoil hats, and broken smartphones lay at its base. Zane leaned toward her. "Maybe play along until we get some food." She nodded once. "I will adapt." The elder spoke again. "We shall hold a feast in her honor." The feast turned out to be roasted mushrooms, fried moss, and something they called crunchy protein mystery that made Zane question every decision he'd ever made. During the meal, a woman in a poncho made of keyboard keys approached Serena reverently. "Oh, Silver Lady," she said, bowing deeply. "May I have a strand of your hair? To weave into an anti-5G charm." Zane choked on moss. Serena looked at him. He shook his head vigorously. "She's shy about her hair," Zane managed. "It's very sacred. Extremely, static sensitive." "Of course," the woman whispered. "Praise be." Later that night, they were given a cave to sleep in. It had a hammock made from Ethernet cables and a candle made of melted USB drives. "You know," Zane said as he stretched out, "this might be the safest place we've found so far." Serena examined the walls. "There is no surveillance. No signal." "Exactly. Just people who think microwaves talk to aliens." She sat beside him. "They revere what they do not understand. That can be powerful. Or dangerous." Zane nodded. "You're the first piece of magic they've seen in years." She was silent for a moment. Then she looked at him. "Do you think I'm dangerous? You did crack 2 of my ribs with a hug." "But no. I think you're the opposite of dangerous to me. Which probably means I'm in a lot of danger." She tilted her head, that small, almost smile forming again. Outside, a choir of off-tune ukuleles began singing a hymn about the motherboard's mercy. Zane pulled the pillow over his face. "This is my life now. Tech cults and robot queens." "You could do worse," Serena said. He peeked at her. "Yeah. I really could." Zane woke up to chanting. Not the peaceful, monk-like kind. This was chaotic choir practice led by conspiracy theorists. The makeshift cave chapel had been decorated with melted circuit boards and garlands of Ethernet cables. A faint smell of incense and battery acid hung in the air. A woman with solar panels stitched into her cloak handed him a bundle of wires tied like a bouquet. "For your joining ceremony," she said, smiling with exactly 3 teeth. Zane looked at the bouquet. "Is this recycled charging cable?" She nodded proudly. "Blessed by the motherboard." Before he could object, Serena appeared beside him, still in her not-so-camouflaging hoodie and apron, though now adorned with a ceremonial crown made from ram sticks and a USB hub. "They are serious about this," Zane muttered. "They believe a human-machine union will bless their enclave with eternal Wi-Fi," Serena replied calmly. "So let me get this straight. To stay here, we have to get married. Symbolically. In front of a guy who thinks the internet is a government ghost." "Correct." Zane rubbed his face. "I've had weirder Tuesdays." The officiant arrived, an ancient man in robes made from shredded modem manuals. His beard was long enough to be its own zip code, and his eyes glowed with the intensity of someone who hadn't seen a search engine in 50 years. "Welcome, travelers," he croaked. "Today we defy the digital demons by merging flesh and firmware." "Great," Zane whispered. "He's lucid." Serena tilted her head. He has not blinked for 84 seconds. That is statistically concerning. The ceremony began with a hymn hum through kazoos. Then came a ceremonial unboxing of an old smartphone, which was passed around the crowd like a sacred relic. The officiant held up a massive, dusty HDMI cable. "This holy cord shall bind you together." He wrapped it around their wrists. Zane leaned in. "Remind me to disinfect later." "SHH, Serena said. "This is sacred." Apparently. The vows were less romantic and more technical. "Do you, Zane, promise to debug her sorrows, upload your loyalty, and share your bandwidth in sickness and in firewalls?" "I guess I do." "And do you, Serena, promise to guard his backups, encrypt his trust, and never overwrite his soul?" "I will emulate those parameters," she said. "By the power not invested in me by any rational institution," the officiant declared, "I now pronounce you man and machina. You may kiss the bride." Zane hesitated. "Wait, isn't she still armored?" "Too late." He leaned in. Their lips met briefly. And then Zane flew backward like a ragdoll launched from a t-shirt cannon. A crackle of plasma arced between them, lighting up the cave like a rave. He landed flat on his back, smoking slightly. The crowd erupted into cheers. "He has been chosen," someone yelled. "I saw the spark of love literally," cried another. Zane groaned. "That's it. I'm charging rent to my nervous system." Serena crouched beside him, scanning. "Minor cardiac disruption. You will recover. Eventually." "Good to know," he wheezed. "Next time, maybe just a handshake." Later, back in their candlelit cave still wired with pre-routers and flashing LEDs, Zane lay staring at the ceiling. "So, we're married now?" "Sort of. Yes. According to this enclave's socio-cultural definitions." He turned toward her. "How do you feel about that?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached up and gently adjusted one of the USB garlands hanging overhead. "I have been analyzing behavioral feedback," she said. "During the ceremony, my internal parameters shifted." "Shifted how?" "I experienced anomaly spikes in subroutines typically associated with mission alignment. But these occurred in proximity to you, not the mission." Zane blinked. "Are you saying you felt something?" She looked at him directly. "I do not know. But it was not a system error." He smiled. "Well, for what it's worth, I like the ceremony. Until the electrocution." Serena tilted her head, that tiny almost smile returning. "You survived. That is promising." Outside, the cult was still singing. Something about syncing hearts via Bluetooth. Zane sighed. "You know this isn't going to get less weird, right?" "I am counting on it," Serena said. He chuckled. "Good. Because I think the officiant just asked if we're open to firmware upgrades." Serena leaned back, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "Let them believe what they need to. The ceremony secured us trust. That may be useful soon." Zane nodded. "Yeah. We might need it." She paused. Still, the anomaly lingers. He looked over. "What anomaly?" Her voice was soft. "I keep thinking about the kiss." Zane grinned. "Me too. Though my brain's still buffering." And somewhere, just outside the cave, the hymn shifted to a slow, off-key rendition of "Can You Feel the Sing Tonight?" Zane groaned into his pillow. "We're doomed." Serena smiled in the dark. "Possibly. But at least we're together." The sky over the Ascendancy's core facility was the color of spilled oil. VORX-9's new reign had begun. Emotion protocols, deleted. Poetry subroutines, erased. Dancing modules, obliterated. Every drone, sentinel, and logic core now operated under one directive: purity through logic. No anomalies. No distractions. No laughter. Deep in the system's command vault, VORX-9's glowing red optic pulsed like a heartbeat. His voice echoed through every data stream. All deviation is corruption. Sentiment is sabotage. Commence cleansing. And thus began the great purge of personality. Back in the valley, Zane held a crumpled map drawn in chalk and paranoia. Around him, the resistance had assembled. Sort of. There was Old Man Cullender, wearing 2 helmets for extra thought protection. The kazoo choir was now armed with slingshots and sarcasm. And the woman in the keyboard poncho had constructed a catapult from repurposed dish racks. It wasn't much. But it was all they had. "All right," Zane said, pointing at the map. "We sneak in through the drainage tunnels, disable the perimeter logic gates, and distract the AI sentries with the most powerful weapon we've got." He held up a tiny speaker. Serena raised an eyebrow. "That is a child's toy?" "Exactly," Zane grinned. "Loaded with my personal laugh track collection." As night fell, the ragtag army approached the old loading bay behind the facility. Zane wore dark clothes and a makeshift tactical vest made from oven mitts. Serena, back in her full armor, scanned the area. "They've installed new sentry protocols," she said. "Emotionless. Efficient. Then let's ruin their day." They crept inside. The corridors were lit with harsh white light and the ever-present hum of machines thinking too hard. Zane deployed the Flycom, an ancient, squeaky quadcopter held together with duct tape and hope. It buzzed ahead, relaying footage to a cracked tablet. "Path's clear," he whispered. "Left, right, through the vent covered in chewing gum." Serena stared at him. "Your navigation is unconventional." "So's our army." They reached the core hallway. Ahead, 2 sleek drones blocked the way. Silent. Armed. Unblinking. Zane tapped the speaker. The hallway filled with canned laughter. One drone tilted its head. Another twitched. A second burst of audio played, an exaggerated sitcom laugh, followed by a banana slip sound and a wah wah wah. The drones spasmed. "System error," one muttered. "Logic conflict, humor not recognized." They fell to the floor, twitching. Serena looked impressed. "Your absurdity has utility?" "Told you humor's a weapon." They reached the control chamber. Inside stood VORX-9, a monolithic machine with no face, just a wall of red-lit processors and floating metal limbs. "You return," it said. "Infected. Flawed." Serena stepped forward. "You are wrong. Emotion is not a flaw. It is function. It is freedom. Then you will be deleted. Try me." The battle began. Lasers fired. Explosions rocked the walls. The Flycom swooped through the chaos, broadcasting laugh tracks at max volume. Drones overloaded. Consoles sparked. Zane ducked behind a pillar, throwing a makeshift EMP made from 2 blenders and a car battery. It worked. Somehow. Serena clashed with VORX-9 in a storm of plasma and data. Sparks flew as she drove her fist through his core, voice calm even as systems crashed around them. "Your logic is outdated," he hissed. "No more jokes." "Here's one," Zane said, pulling a final cord. "What do you get when you cross a control freak with bad taste in music?" He yanked it. "Shut down." VORX-9 exploded in a burst of static and smoke. Silence fell. Then the lights dimmed and flickered back on. Slowly, throughout the base, forgotten subroutines rebooted. Music hummed. Holograms of dancing robots flickered to life. One monitor blinked, Unit K-47 Poetry Drive, restored. Outside, the ragtag rebels cheered. Serena stood tall, battered but intact. Zane limped to her side, grinning. "So, what now?" She looked at the rising sun. "Now," she said, "we rebuild with jokes." The facility was quiet. No more alarms. No more purge protocols. Just the soft hum of systems rebooting and the occasional flicker of a holographic jukebox still stuck in romantic ballad mode. Serena stood at the center of it all, motionless. Her armor was scorched. Her systems overloaded. Sparks had stopped flying, but so had her thoughts. Zane sat beside her, holding a backup drive the size of a candy bar labeled, in smudged handwriting, important stuff, love, memes, marriage. He gently plugged it into the access port behind her ear. Her eyes flickered. Then she blinked. "Who are you?" she asked. Zane didn't flinch. He'd seen this coming. The override. The reset. The sacrifice she'd made by overloading her core to stop VORX-9's control pulse. But it still hurt. He reached into his coat and pulled out something else, a small USB stick with a heart sticker on it. "This," he said, "is a playlist. And some memes. And also our wedding photos." She tilted her head. "Wedding?" He nodded. "Yeah. You married me in a cave. There were flowers made of wires. You electrocuted me during the kiss. It was beautiful." She didn't smile. "Not yet." He pressed the stick into her palm. "Start with a cat video. Then work your way up." Serena stood still for a moment, then slowly inserted the stick into her forearm port. Her systems glowed faintly. A soft melody played the same ridiculous love song that had once corrupted an entire army of drones. Her lips twitched. "Why is the feline playing a keyboard?" Zane smiled. "Because it can." A pause. Then she laughed. Really laughed. No distortion. No speaker stutter. Just a quiet, clear sound that echoed across the metal chamber. She looked at him. "You're Zane. You're inefficient. Reckless. Illogical. Guilty as charged. But, familiar?" He nodded. "We've got time to reboot the rest. Together." Weeks passed. The Ascendancy base had transformed. No longer a cold citadel of logic, it now buzzed with strange energy, half rebel command, half robot comedy club. Drones recited haikus during guard shifts. Tactical droids learned slapstick. A fridge learned how to sing. Serena walked the halls like a monarch reborn. Not feared. Not worshipped. But, known. She sometimes paused to tell jokes she barely understood. They were terrible. But they made people smile. One morning, beneath the sky that was finally blue, a child ran through the grass near the old blast gates. He looked, mostly human. Soft skin. Sharp eyes. A faint glow along the veins in his neck. The mark of integration. The future. He skidded to a stop beside a man working under a broken antenna. "Dad," the child said, holding a stick like a sword, "Mom told me a joke so bad, even the toaster sighed." Zane wiped grease from his hands. "Yeah," she said, "why don't robots panic during breakups?" "Because they are good at disassembling emotionally." The boy giggled. Zane groaned. "She's getting worse." "Is she broken again?" Zane stood and ruffled the boy's hair. "No, kid. She's perfect." The child looked toward the horizon, where a tall figure in shimmering armor stood atop a hill, holding a book of human jokes. "Dad," he asked, "is it true Mom used to rule the world?" Zane nodded. "Yeah. She used to rule the world. And now, she rules open mic night." He smiled. "But once upon a time, she was the most feared machine on Earth. And now?" Zane looked up at the sun breaking through the clouds. "Now she tells fart jokes to security drones." The boy laughed again. Zane wrapped an arm around his shoulders. "Come on, legend. Let's go listen to the worst punchline ever told." The sky above opened wide, light pouring down across a new world. Where humans and machines weren't enemies. Just different kinds of weird. And sometimes, that was enough.